no matter what industry, with people that I talk to, they can't find help.
Yeah, landscapers,
Yeah, it doesn't matter what it is.
Well, it's lots and lots of applications to meet the criteria, but nobody shows up with them.
Well, and then once you get them in the door, they don't last long. They might last a week or two and then decide to leave without any notice. I mean, it's really a paradigm shift in the workforce, that's for sure, so.
And like they talked about today, part of the reason for really needing it is that people know that there's intrinsic value in working, that it helps your mental health and stuff like that. And they were talking about how mental health services have increased during this pandemic. And, you know, possibly some of it is because people aren't working and don't have that satisfaction level and stuff that comes from actually obtaining a job and keeping it and providing for their families and stuff. So.
Okay, that's good. Sure. What about the health one? Do you want to briefly tell them about the health survey that Judy's doing, that they're recognizing basically the hospitals and, well, anybody in the health industry, they're putting together a new coalition that's going to actually go through and evaluate the needs and try to put a priority to it. I mean, there's, whether it be, they narrowed the list down to 5, but they're trying to get to 3, have a priority of just only 3.
Suicide prevention,
It
it was early and it was new.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there was.
I have it written down.
Yeah, that I thought that was another interesting one that we're taking, but the reason why is because, thank goodness, I mean, the legislature is acknowledging the fact that the Northern Utah with the chambers, they really, the feedback is, we like that you guys are going through and prioritizing things, that you kind of already vetted everything out, and it helps guide them as far as what the priorities are. So they're really looking to the Northern Utah Chamber Coalition to kind of put together those priorities for this year. So they've identified 5 key areas that they really want to narrow. Actually, not just for that, but I mean, they're looking at a broad base where they'll include any of the services that fall under that purview. So, yeah. And any of the companies out there that are already providing those services, they're going to bring them under that same umbrella. So it really kind of gives a good funnel effect to how to take care of the issues more direct. Hey, anybody else? I'll quickly give you my update, because usually what happens is mine's at the end and then I never get a chance to. So, with the waste management, there's been talk now for about a year as far as the commercial haulers coming in and bringing in a lot of the landfill, and their rates have been $32 a ton. What's happening is you're getting people coming in from all the other cities because, one, it's very convenient to come to our landfill, and then 2, it's a lot cheaper. So the board last night voted on the increase, so it's going to go from $32 a ton up to $38 a ton. But there's a caveat to it that there's no way that, in other words, the cities will be exempt. So if we have a city vehicle that needs to take product to the landfill, they're not going to be impacted by that increase, or anybody that we contract for our waste pickup and everything. So that part, so the city's protected, so the citizens won't be impacted either as far as any type of rate increase. This is more targeted for the commercials. And in addition to that, anybody taking a mattress to the landfill, there will be a $10 fee on that as well. So there's been a lot of, I think currently they charge $5, they're going to increase it to $10. And they're going to actually, apparently with the mattresses, they can get into the processing of them. And it goes to the shredding and kind of repurpose those as well.
If you take a mattress, you're going to pay $10.
Yes.
road out, west of.
We need to,
all the
yeah,
mattresses.
we need to keep some open trucks for mattresses. They're gonna be all
Yeah, so anyway,
Yeah.
that's the update on my report, but, so with that, no other reports then? Okay, Steve, you're up.
Thank you. It's good to be here again tonight. On the mouse here. Put this up. So, wanted to talk a little bit about conservation, what the city does as far as from the engineering side and the water system side to conserve water and operate our system. And then Dave is going to talk about what the Parks is doing and some of those other items. So, in 2000, the year 2000, the state required that all public water systems create a water conservation plan. So this is not new. This is something we've been doing for quite a long time. The most recent water conservation plan we have is from 2016. It was approved back in December of 2016. The next one is due a draft by August 15th of 2022, and then we'll have to have one finalized by the end of the year next year. So in the 2016 plan, we had three main goals that we were looking at doing. One was to reduce the per capita use an additional 1 to 2% every year over the next 5 years, evaluate water pricing in the system and its effectiveness to make sure that we were utilizing the pricing structures to help people conserve. That's also a state law that was passed that required that, and then continuing to educate the public to promote water-wise practices where possible. And we feel like we've done a pretty good job on all three of these goals to be able to, and now it's time to update the goals to the next steps. By 2025. So one of the important things is the per capita number. The state looks at a per capita usage rate, not an overall water rate, because or water use rate, because we're growing as a state, and so water use is going up. What they're looking at is how much each one of us is using individually and how we can get that number to be reduced, because we are the second driest state in the country, yet we have pretty decent per capita rate of water use. So overall, we've seen a 20% reduction since the year 2000. In the 2012 master plan, the calculation was 251 gallons per capita per day. That's the GPCD number. And 20 data estimates that we have, we're showing that we're about 233 gallons per capita per day. So we have seen an approximate 1% reduction per year since 2012 when the master plan was completed. That equates to roughly 40 to 45 million gallons per year. So it's a decent amount of water that we're saving every year based on our habits, the things that people are doing to save water. It's roughly 340 million gallons since 2012. So a bunch of the conservation efforts we're doing rely on our water system, rely on how we operate the water system. We have account notifications for 24-hour continued use on our meters. So as our meter readers read, if there's inadvertent time in that period of the meter read that it runs for a continual 24 hours, then it will actually flag the meter, and it will allow us to contact the homeowner and say, hey, there's potential that you might have had a leak, or you have a leak currently. And so we help the homeowners figure out if there's something they should be looking for. We have a leak detection and repair program. As we mentioned in a couple other meetings, we fixed 168 meter leaks last year, 16 service leaks and replacements, and 71 broken mains. We have one of the lowest water loss rates in the state. And they use the term water loss, so I use it here. It doesn't mean the water is lost. It just means it was unmetered water from what we bring into the system versus what we bill out. That could be from anything from hydrant flushing to firefighting operations to water leaks to water theft. To be honest, if somebody's hooking onto a hydrant to fill a swimming pool or something like that, the statewide range on that is 5 to 15%. So we are at the low end of that spectrum. We've improved our construction water metering system. We have a water fill station now out just off Sugar Street that trucks can go fill up at, that is metered. They charge for the water because they're using it for construction purposes. There are construction meters that people can get from our public works shop to put on mobile water tanks to use to make sure we're accounting for all of that water. We also participate in Weaver Basin's conservation program. We pay for that through our rates that we pay Weaver Basin, so we want to take as much advantage of that as we can. We actually have participated in a lot of their planning and data gathering efforts that they've sent out to the cities to ask what we're seeing as far as water use versus what we think people would be willing to do in our city to conserve water or to basically, help them understand what they should be placing their funds towards in that conservation system that they have. So, public education, they have a lot of sources and resources up at Weaver Basin from their conservation program. Localscapes is a big one that they're promoting for new landscaping. It's a program that all of the big water districts are participating in and funding, which encourages people to landscape their yards so that it encourages water-wise landscaping. It doesn't take away all of the useful, green, vegetation, but it also says, hey, don't just plant grass everywhere because grass is one of the highest water users we have. And so there's a lot of really interesting information out there for people that want to try and use that as a resource.
Jordan River water, is that what it's called,
There's Jordan Valley water.
Jordan Valley?
Yeah.
How big is that? Is it as big as Weaver?
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're a pretty large water district down
They
there.
had a program where they give $2,000. It's like scholarship. If you want to landscape your yard, they'll give you $2,000. And if you're I just lost the word, a developer, then they give you so much money as you build your homes and that you create landscape.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a great idea. I'm sure they get a grant. I don't think they're doing it, out of their pockets, but
those are things Weaver Basin is exploring. They had almost a full page list of different ideas and things that they were testing the waters on to look at. I don't know where in particular they are with that type of.
Well, it was just interesting when I heard that. I thought, wow. And then he said, we make it back and saving,
being able to sell the water to somebody else. So, yeah,
okay.
They are looking at some of those things. We also send out a water quality report every year. We joke that a lot of people don't read it, but there is information in there about water conservation as well as the water quality that we have here in the city. And so we're trying to encourage people to understand what it is that we do and why we need to conserve water. So we do change out meters consistently as they age so that they're reading correctly. That it sounds like a minor thing, but if every meter in the city is reading incorrectly, then there could be a lot of potential loss and a lot of potential use that is not being accounted for. We have telemetry systems, which are remote reading tools that we can actually see the levels in our tanks and in our different valves and things that help us understand where we're at, and we can see trends in those. That if we have a water leak, will actually show up on our trend lines and whatnot. And then a huge one that we have found is our fire hydrant policy. Back in 9/11, we ended up in a Homeland Security effort. We ended up prohibiting anybody from using our fire hydrants except our city staff, and we found that the water break number went down by 50%. So we've lost a lot of water over the years from that.
So I was going to ask about that because last week we passed the construction area on Layton Parkway where Town of Money's going to be, and the hydrant that's sitting right there was full open, and we passed it, and an hour and a half later came back and it was still running. Water was actually out onto the parkway, and just
we were actually doing some flushing operations in the system, and so that was intentional that we were having to use that.
So
water.
question is there any way to divert that water somewhere? I mean, you have hooking up fire hoses and putting it in that new detention basin and watering that instead of the sprinkler system. And is there some way to utilize that water somewhere when they flush the systems instead of down the drain?
Not necessarily. I mean, we'd have to dump it onto private property or something like that. And when we flow those, you saw how high the water was flowing. I mean, they're flowing 1,000, 1,500 gallons a minute. And so it would be really difficult to do that. And unfortunately, that's sometimes the cost of what we have to do that. But if there is an opportunity, I'm sure we would look into that. If there were not such high flows in that area in particular. And then I guess the last one that we wanted to touch on was the water billing that went in effect in November of 2018. We met the state requirements to have a tiered system, and we also changed some monthly bills, which has helped drastically inform the residents of what what they're using. Instead of waiting for 2 months to receive that information, they can receive that now in the 30-day billing cycle. So, the game changed on us in 2019. So if you recall, 25% by 2025 now is the Utah Regional M&I Water Conservation Goals, and M&I Water stands for Municipal and Industrial. So it includes residential, commercial, institutional, and industrial uses, but it does not include agriculture, mining, aquaculture, power generation. So basically they came out with these goals and they wanted to talk about different regions of the state and the different needs that they have. And I apologize, it's a little hard to see, but you've got some areas like Box Elder County, their number was 249, Tooele was 187. 179. We're in the Weber area, and so our goal is to be at 200 gallons per capita per day by 2030. So we're at 20, and this is based on a 2015 baseline. So we were at 250 gallons per capita per day. So they want us to try and shoot for that. So that is our future goal, is to get down by 2030 to 200 gallons per capita per day, and then there's projections in 2040, 2065 that are just projections right now. They're reevaluating those as they get more data. They've increased at the state the requirements to provide better water data to them. And so these outlying conservation goals will be adjusted as they see that data come through the system.
Is that both culinary and secondary?
Yeah, it's total water
Total
use.
water.
Yeah. So our future goals that we're planning to work on as we get our new conservation plan set up is that we want to evaluate regulations for landscaping, indoor plumbing, and secondary water requirements. We're working on a landscaping ordinance amendment right now. There are opportunities with Weber Basin. They offer rebates on some indoor plumbing fixtures and things, as well as smart meters for their secondary water systems. We want to develop a specific water conservation ordinance. We have pieces and parts of that in our code right now, but we don't have one that just is the water conservation ordinance. We want to continue to get our older water meters replaced as needed to make sure that they're working correctly, evaluating that tiered structure to make sure it is still promoting conservation and drought planning, as well as we're working to provide users with a water use report similar to what Water Basin provides now for their secondary meters, to be able to understand what their outdoor watering need is, as well as their indoor use that they're using. And the long-term goal, the technology is getting to the point with meters as the new iterations of meters comes out, that we'll be able to provide real-time water usage for customers. We would think that that would be possible with the next full change out of our meter system as we look for ways to improve. So just real quick, I wanted to remind everyone of what Weber Basin provided to the customer agency meeting. So we attend that every year. This was back in March of this year. This was the snow-tail data. Everywhere in the state was below snowpack levels of average. So we're at 75% here in this area. The drought monitor, we're considered to be in a good drought. I mean, an extreme to exceptional drought in some areas of the state here. So keeping that in mind, the soil moisture is a big component of how much runoff we'll get. And this is the line. It's pretty abysmal compared to where we've seen it in the past. And then the forecasted runoff, this is in acre feet. If you remember, that's 328,000 gallons of water. They typically get 320,000 acre feet coming off of the mountains, and we're projected that they were getting a whopping 112. So it's not to scare anybody, that's just, we need to take it serious. The state has asked for us, they sent a letter the other day that asks us to take this opportunity to evaluate our water use and our water conservation plans, our drought mitigation plans, and all those things to make sure that we're being wise stewards of the water that we have. So, any other questions? If not, I'm going to turn it over to Dave to talk about his portion.
Any questions? On all of them?
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate being able to come and share some of our practices with you tonight. Try to go through this quickly. If some of you have seen some of this information, the mayor was kind to help her with the video, and Kylie Day has been good enough to help us prepare this for our city's website. But for our department, water conservation is tied to everything that we do in parks. It starts with proper planning and design, correct construction, and then proper maintenance. And so all of these aspects that you see in this graph or chart help us save water if they're done correctly. So we'll go through some of this as we progress. And so each of our sites, we typically try to analyze the site to see what is the proper application for landscaping. These are some of the areas where we've used low or no water applications. The Vance Trailhead or Vance Drive Trailhead is an example of regional planting with the drip irrigation system and a heat tolerant or low water sod up in the area there. And then you can see a couple of these others, again, low or no water. One of the things that we've concentrated on is in our parks is that we try to keep the grass healthy and safe in those areas where they're actively playing, and in the areas that are not used as much, we've looked again at low water applications. So that one is at Sandridge, but Greyhawk and our new park, from the trail to the fence, we've used a lower water technique in all of those parks. We've also tried to get out some education about regional landscapes. This is the new sign that will be down at the Vance Trailhead, Vance Drive Trailhead, and it goes through some water saving techniques that can be used in our own homes. The reason this is important is because if we water appropriately and we keep the fields in good condition, they're safe fields. And our young athletes are not injured as often if that turf is strong and in good condition. So it's important in many ways. Some non-irrigation water saving techniques, soil improvements at the time of construction. During the maintenance, we aerate or use soil fracturing techniques to allow water to travel into the soil quickly. And then we also use chemical moisture retention products when it's appropriate. And these simply help us attract water and hold it in the soil longer. So you can see that the hydrotane in this area right here is made quite a difference in how the sod is developed.
So what is that? Is it a chemical spray or
It
what
is.
is it? Okay.
It can be, there's a liquid and there's also a granular. And it simply just attracts moisture into the soil and binds it to the soil so that more of the water is held in the soil layer instead of evaporating quickly.
Don't you use that on hills a lot and stuff where it runs off?
We have, this has been most effective because it is a little expensive. We use it in those areas that we have had the most trouble with. And so sometimes when our soil quality is not quite as nice as it could be, this allows us to keep the water in the soil. The most important part about this is our water managers. Our staff is dedicated to making sure that we use water correctly. We have 14 irrigation managers in the parks, and they go through extensive training on the proper use of water and irrigation design, installation, and maintenance. In our parks, we have 14 parks that we take care of, but we have 39 individually irrigated sites. And so those include the parks, streetscapes, the interchanges, and detention basins. Within those sites, we have 78 irrigation controllers and 957 irrigation valves. And so it's a big job for our staff, and they do the very best they can. When we have a rainstorm, we try to anticipate those things, and all 14 of those managers are out turning off controllers and trying to get ahead of it. And so, as you can see, we estimate about 9,000 sprinklers out in our parks and sites. So they're busy guys. To help with this task, we use a smart-based irrigation control system. And what this does, the weather track controller is the one we're using right now. It communicates daily with the Weather Track Corporation, and they provide an evapotranspiration rate. And that data, that information will automatically reset the controllers so that they're applying the proper amount of water for that day. And as you can see in the graphics there, if we get a large rainstorm, the weather track controllers will shut off those controllers, and it will not allow the water to be turned back on until it is needed in the soil. And that is a huge thing, because it doesn't just react to a rainstorm, it reacts to daily fluctuations. And so if it's a really hot, windy day, it will apply more water. If it has a higher humidity and not quite as sunny, it will automatically back off the amount of water that's put down in the park. And this type of technology is available in a lot of the new controllers that you can buy for your home. Again, the weather track has been really good. When we set it up, we have to go through all of those things on the left of that chart. We define the type of irrigation system we're putting in, the plant type, the slope, the microclimate of the area, and the soil type. Once we've done that correctly, then the weather track maximizes the flow, reducing the water window, which is extremely important for us. It detects leaks. It makes those constant changes that we talked about, and it also alerts us if we have a broken sprinkler or valve. The weather track controllers are all linked to a central operating system within our parks, and they're accessible by our irrigation managers on their phones and computers. And so even if they go home in the evening and we need to make an adjustment, they can do that from their home and shut down all the irrigation at the parks, at least the weather track controllers. Now, additionally, those controllers allow us to manage the water window. And the water window is critical for us. At your home, you know, if you water between 10 o'clock at night or 6 at night and 10 in the morning, you could probably turn and run your entire system 3 or 4 times without any worry. When we look at a water window, we typically cannot start watering till 11 o'clock at night because our parks are filled with people and young athletes. And then we have to stop at the appropriate time in the morning. And so the weather track system allows us to maximize the amount of time that we can apply water. And that helps us a great deal. It also uses a cycle soak feature. So in areas like Ellison, where we have a clay soil, the controller will automatically run each zone for smaller windows of time. And then it will change to another zone and water that one and then come back later. So it allows the water to soak down into the ground. It uses rain delay features that we talked about. We also use rain sensors that automatically shut off controllers. And we have a water budgeting feature that allows us to change the percentage of water that's applied seasonally.
You know, Jake, I think that's one that a lot of even homeowners need to be educated on, that you don't need to run your sprinklers 100%, you know, that you can lower it 50% during certain seasons and up it as it warms up. And so I don't know if there's any education that could be done. I mean, most people, when they set their timer, that's what they do for the whole season. And I don't think I just think the ordinary homeowner doesn't understand, you know, the fluctuations in the percents and all of that. And if there's some way that through a Facebook thing or something, or on the water bill, to kind of maybe give some education on really what those timers are capable of doing.
Sure. And that feature is one of the simplest ones to utilize. If you simply set up the controller so that the percentage is fairly equivalent to the average temperature of the day, you'll change it from 70 to 80, 90 to 100%. And throughout the season, you'll see that automatically adjust all your zones. And we can look at that with our communications group.
I think some of that has been done and will continue to be done as part of this ongoing effort to educate people. One thing that I suspect you've had several comments about we do on the staff level is the idea that sometimes people will drive by a park at a certain time of day and they see the water on and they come back an hour later and that same area is being watered again and they think that it's been running continuously. And as Dave pointed out, but it might have been missed, is this cycle soak feature. Instead of running for 20 minutes at a time, it'll run for 5 minutes. And it'll go cycle around because the soil condition and the inefficient use of the water because it's clay, it'll just run off as opposed to soak in. Then it'll go in 20 minutes later or 30 minutes later, an hour later, it'll come back and do another 5 minutes. And so people, we form judgments, which is logical, based on our 5-second time frame we're driving by something. If we see it again later, we assume that the water has been running for an hour when it hasn't. It's shut off. So that's part of this education effort is, as well when you use these features, is that it's sometimes you draw perceptions of things happening, but you're not realizing that it's based on the data that's coming to it. Not the very most efficient way. It's not wasteful. It's actually trying to conserve it.
Thank you, Miles. If you have questions, please holler. And so some of the most common concerns that we get from our citizens, I'm sure you hear them too. And so we just wanted to address them head on and let you know what's going on. Why is the field wet? That's one of the questions that we get, especially down at Ellison Park. Our parks are multi-purpose. Almost all of them now are built with detention basins in them. And those detention basins are built with a certain amount of clay in them to keep the water in. I mean, that's what it's built to do. And then slowly release. And so at Ellison Park, even 2 or 3 days after a large storm, that will sometimes still be holding water for several days. And so it may have been sunny for the last 2 days, but when you come out to play, we still have some water there. Also, after large special events, during a soccer tournament or the car show, we have to dry out the field so that it's optimal conditions for the athletes or the cars to be able to drive on. And then after that event, we have to increase the water to raise that water level in the soil. And so after an event, it may be a little bit, it will receive more water than it would normally. Different soil conditions absorb at different rates. But we believe that over the last few years, especially with the weather track system down at Ellison Park, we're getting much better at managing this water, and then these wet fields occur fewer and fewer times. Why are you watering during the daytime? That's another one that we get calls on occasionally. We don't. We observe that water window religiously. When it becomes 10 o'clock, these controllers are programmed to shut down. But to maintain and to take care of a system this large, we do have to test these systems regularly. And so If not weekly, bi-weekly, we are out and we try to run through each of these zones at least once so that we can identify any broken heads or misaligned heads, any valves that are not functioning correctly. And so that's why you may see the water turned on occasionally during the day. To help the public, we have, for the past few years, we've set out signs at the parks when we're testing the irrigation system. And they simply inform the public that that's what's happening, so they understand that. Why are you, let's see. I'm sorry, I got them mixed up. Why are you watering every day? Typically we don't. And again, as Alex said, not only do we cycle through a zone in the evening, but in a park, the water will turn on every night at, say, Woody Park, but it's a different area in the park that's running. And so we typically water every second to third day, depending on the temperature, but the water will come on every night. It's just a different part of the park that's being watered. And then why are the sprinklers watering the road? Again, occasionally it's just because a sprinkler will get knocked out of alignment, either from a mower coming past it or from kids playing with it, or some other reason. That's why we test them, is to be able to find these problems and fix them as quickly as we can.
So Dave, do you guys adhere to the state water conservation, where, you know, they put out the little map that you should water right now only once a week? We're in that phase for once a week, and then they'll eventually move us up to 2 irrigations a week, 3 irrigations a week. Does the city adhere to that?
We take that into consideration, but we don't always abide by it. Sometimes in some parks, like this park, we have been making repairs to the irrigation system for the last week. And so it is beginning to show a little dryness and a little stress. When we get all those repairs made, we'll water heavily for a couple days. But the intent is to try to stay fairly close to that.
Because I think that's, even Weaver Base is trying to push that as the, you know, if you've got impact heads or rotary heads or whatever, you know, there's 20 minutes, and try to get people to adhere to that little map they showed, so.
Yeah, and we do pay attention to that and the guidelines that the state provides. But again, those guidelines are typically put out for the residential areas. It's a little more complicated to take care of 300 acres, but we do try to. And again, in closing, as we look at the new park that we're building, the park is built with water conservation in mind. We continue to use this weather track at this park, that controller that will take care of things. We use bluegrass turf in the areas that we have soccer going on and active play, and then we have the water conservating turf on the outside edges. And as I said, most of our recent parks have that type of treatment. We use drip irrigation where appropriate. Around the new tennis court, we'll be drip irrigation with regional planting and a gravel mulch. And we continue to reevaluate our existing parks. I don't know if you've noticed that the changes we made to Chapel Park this last year, a lot of those were geared towards saving water and, you know, keeping the grass that's important healthy. But yeah, where it's not as important, we're looking at low water applications. So, any questions?
I've got one. What I guess I don't see here is the smart controllers, all the things that the staff does to make sure that we're not wasting water. That's what that does. What about not using, or using less water? So I get that we use the smart controller so we don't waste the water. We use it efficiently with the weather track, but we don't have enough water. Those weather trackers and those controllers don't know how much water we have. We just act on the programming. So what's the goal? What's the budget for water? Are we using less water this year than we did last year? Are we using, so we don't have enough. So that's my, and what are we hoping
how are we
that the,
conserving?
yeah, how are we using less? Not wasting, so there's different ways to look at it.
Yeah, we believe these techniques are saving water. We did, Steve's group was able to pull some year after year numbers of how many gallons we've used. And it correlates more with the weather of that year, so it's difficult to determine if we're actually, reducing this year from last year in the parks, because one year may have a much higher natural rain. We just receive more natural water in one year, so of course we don't use as much that year. The next year may be very hot, so we use more water. But we are committed to that, to saving water and reducing the water usage. In fact, our department is working to put together a plan that will hopefully dovetail with the work Steve and his organization is doing for the 2022 report.
Well, kind of go along with what Clint has to say. So, where I live, we have 12 acres of open space. That's all in sod. And we've been working with the landscape company to come up with an education for the residents that, golf course green is really nice, but this year it's not gonna happen. But where is that balance between keeping the sod somewhat healthy and weed control, and keep that balance so that we do our part to conserve on this water, knowing that, because the other option is come August, if we have nothing, then we're gonna lose everything. And, better kind of upfront to kind of go easy and like I said, and it may need to be an education for the residents too, that, hey, maybe the parks might not look quite as green this year, but they're healthy, we're doing what we can on our part to cut back as well. And I don't know, I just think that, if the governor's called the extreme drought, talking to the irrigation companies and their worry and concern, that I think we rightfully should probably.
And I'm not questioning the techniques.
Yeah,
and the
great.
And the technology and the work and the
Yeah.
vision. I'm not questioning any of that, because that's professional and trained personnel. It's just you don't have the water.
Can you do a little less?
Yeah, less water.
And still be okay?
And so currently we are using best management practices to keep our turf healthy and safe. As we are directed by council through Alex to take the next step, we have a plan in place where we will begin to brown, we call it conservation brown, for our neighborhood parks, for those parks that are not used for everyday athletic events. And that you will see, we will be saving water, we'll be reducing our water usage, but our neighbors and people that call you will call and you'll just need to let them know that this is a decision that the city has made, and you'll see that difference. And then again, those steps are just incremental. As we're directed, we can turn that down and slow the flow. But again, you will see that difference, and one of the things we're concerned about is again the safety and the playability of these parks. If we take Ellison to a place where the grass is not safe, then we put ourselves at liability through the possibility of injuries and the complications that come with that.
I think that's the difficult balance. What you're saying is that most landscaping is aesthetic, frankly. In businesses or even in our homes, we want green because it looks nice. But here you have a large business. We have thousands, tens of thousands, tens of thousands, that are using the parks for activities. We invite people in to play soccer, we invite them to play volleyball, et cetera. And so we do feel like there's an obligation to make sure they're safe. There are some of your preventive tournaments around that play in other government facilities that are full of holes and ruts and chunks of grass because it hasn't been maintained over time, and nobody wants to play there because they twist ankles or they do this and that. So we're not saying that one's more important than the other, but there's a balance there that's hard to navigate. and everybody has an opinion on it, that's the other balance, politically, you know, is it was too green, you criticize, if it's not green enough, you're criticized, and it depends on whose office is getting bored, but we do want to reduce it overall and be very responsible. I think that, even though it's not directly tied to, I think the number that Steve showed about the 4.95% is very telling in just the whole mindset that the city has. Can we do better? Absolutely. But when Steve talked to the gentleman from the state, the guy just, not to try to directly quote it, but basically said Layton does it as well as anybody. He's one of the top leaders in the state in terms of that water loss number. So all those things that are happening, none of them are very public and none of them are very sexy, if you will. They're just part of the ongoing operation that saves millions and millions and millions of gallons of water. But it's just an ongoing effort, and we hope to start with this, the mayor's initiative, and what we're trying to do throughout this year is to really continue to emphasize this with what we can do, what the average citizen can do, and hopefully that many people will respond. And of course, the rates are the large thing that are going to have a reducing effect on water usage. That's just how it always is. So we think we can get there. We need to continue to look at ways to do it.
And I think our parks are great, I really do. I mean, I think we've got the best around. It's just, I'm worried this year, but we don't know what next year's gonna bring. It's gonna be getting progressively worse. And I know Chad's here, so the landscape ordinance gets public hearing for the first time on Tuesday, which is exciting. And, you know, and I think if we're showing that the city's really trying to do its best, maybe the citizens will follow, I think is kind of.
Well, I think that I'd love that message to be, we're asking you to use less water. Here's how we're using less water, not here's how we're not wasting water. It's a different message. To me, it's a different message. You can ask people to do it, but if you're not doing it, the presentation to me is that, yep, you guys got it, and I believe you do. I do. It's the, okay, what can you do with 10% less water? If that's whatever that number is, and say, okay, guess what? We're using 10% less water, and we are efficient, and we're doing these things, and whatever that balance is that you mentioned, keeping those parks that the youth are using for sports are safe, whatever that balance needs to be. There's a message. They're saying, hey, we're doing it. We're asking you to do it, and we're doing it too. So that's where I thought about it.
No, and again, you know, we're here to take whatever actions you come up with. We do need a clear message from you as to what you expect to see in your parks. Because this is at a very intimate level with our residents and with you and our Parks Department. When we make that change to reduce the water to the point that we see the parks brown a little bit, you know, you can immediately tell that they're not getting the water they need. We've made a conscious decision to cut back, and there is only so much we can do through proper management to save water. Eventually, if you want additional savings, you will see the results in the parks.
Well, I think it's one of those things that you pointed out. You've got your staff out on the parks pretty much daily, if not weekly, or weekly, but sometimes daily. But I think as we progress in this shortage, we're definitely going to have to make some changes. And that's where we're going to rely on your folks to kind of let us know, okay, yes, we're there, we need to probably do that.
And I don't.
Because we don't know the programming like you guys do intimately, and knowing when is the best time to take that action.
And I think the key, everybody has their own idea is what's good. Okay? So what you do at Ellison, what you do in a neighborhood park, different. They look different because of the reasons. People can understand the reasons, but I think what Clint's kind of looking at, it also helps to be able to say, you know, we use 1 million gallons, now we're only using 980. I mean, you know, there's also that availability to show, you know, not just say, go look at it, you know, because it becomes obvious, but to actually have a number that says we are. But I also realize that number can be 1 million gallons each year, but it's where you put it, not how much you're using. And so I think sometimes that could be, I don't know if it's helpful or not, but anyway, it's just another thing that if you could do something in that window to people see that and go, oh, they're using less, not, oh, you didn't notice the brown park up there? They're obviously using less, but, you know, I don't know, but it would help in some respects, in other respects, maybe it doesn't, I don't know.
Well, you mentioned about you have signs that say, you know, testing's in progress. Maybe when we get to that point, if we need to start browning down, is post a sign that in an effort to conserve water in this extremely dry, this park may start browning, and, you know, we're aware or something, you know. Like I said, I think it's all education. I think hopefully this year we'll really push a lot of education on what, I mean, the slow flow, whatever weaver basin's doing, all of that. I think getting a new landscape ordinance is going to be huge for the city. But it's going to take a mindset, you know. We love our green here, and this might not be the year to do that. So, but I recognize, like I said, you don't want to lose your sod, you don't want weeds to overtake, you don't want kids to get hurt. So I know there is a balance, but where do we find that? But like I said, we have the best parks, so thank you.
And people don't realize, you know, they have no clue what grass does. Unless it's green, they think it's dead. But, I mean, grass can be, look dead, and you water more, and it comes back green. So, I mean, and when you say educate the public, I'm like, yeah, let's go spit in the wind. I mean, it's hard to educate the public, you know, and I don't know the answers. We need to try as best as we can, but it's not going to be easy, you know, because, you know, you put out signs saying you're going to do something and nobody stops, reads the signs, but come council night, they're here, and you're going, well, it's too late now, you know.
Well, I think you guys gotta realize too, we were trying to be ahead of this before it really became a state problem as well. So I think it's just, we continue to work it, and continue to educate, and continue to come up with ideas to kind of get people thinking about it.
Do whatever we can, but with the realization that there's no golden ring that you pull and everything's fine.
Okay. Anything else?
Thank you again, Dave, for the part.
Thank you.
That was good.
Okay, let's move on to item number 3. So, Tracy?
So tonight we have resolution 21-23 to adopt the tentative budget. There isn't anything in the budget that we haven't talked about in several meetings. The one thing to bring up possibly in the public meetings tonight would be the fact that, sorry, back there in the heat for a minute, but can't talk to that, would be the fact that the situation with the paramedic services and the fact that Davis County is going to discontinue those. And so that in this budget, we're proposing to go through the truth and taxation process. And that when we do that, that will be an increase in the city property tax with a corresponding decrease in the county property tax. So it should be net zero for the property owners. Those numbers aren't in the tentative budget yet because those percentages and tax rates haven't come out yet. So when we adopt the resolution tonight, we'll be adopting the tentative budget so that it's out in the public, people can review it, you can continue to review it, we'll continue to review it, but then we'll also set a public hearing for June 3rd when people can come and make comments and so forth, and we'll discuss further the process of the truth and taxation. So I handed out kind of an approximate timeline. We'll do the tentative budget and set the public hearing tonight. On June 3rd, we'll hold a public hearing and update the council on the timelines and the dates for the truth and taxation. We'll also, then June 17th, well, I put adopt tentative budget, but it's not the tentative budget. We'll adopt a budget and propose a tax rate. And then on July 8th, if we'd like to, we can mail a flyer with utility bills. It's just something that I'm proposing so that we educate. We've got every utility customer out there, not that it has anything to do with utilities, but that's the best way to get a message out to everyone so they don't miss it, about the fact that we'll most likely have a town hall or an open house to educate people about why we are going to raise the tax rate so that it's not a surprise. Middle of July, the county will send out a combined advertisement, given that most of the entities, if not all of the cities and districts in Davis County will be increasing their property taxes in order to provide paramedic service. The county will do one combined advertisement for everybody, so we'll be listed on that. Then they'll send out the valuation notices on the 22nd, the 25th, they'll send, and these dates are approximate, around the 25th, they'll send out a second combined advertisement. It would be proposed that on the 5th, we could hold the town hall or some sort of a public meeting so that we could educate people about what's proposed. Then on the 19th, we would hold an actual public hearing that's required and adopt the final budget and tax rate. If for some reason we weren't able to do those in the same night, it was decided that we, based on the way the public hearing went, we didn't want to adopt it that same night. We'd then have to hold a special meeting on the 26th so that we had the budget adopted prior to September 1st. Now, the reason that gets pushed back a little bit is there's a 10 business day rule from when the valuation notices are sent out. And so the earliest we could hold a public hearing is August 6th, but our first meeting is August 5th. So it kind of pushes things down the calendar ways just because of how the calendar falls. But are there any questions on any of that?
I have a couple of questions. They're more, how complicated this is. They're kind of bucket questions. So we currently, there's the mill levy, there's a line item on the property tax that says Davis County Paramedic Services that each residents pay, we pay in Layton. And then, and I get what we're doing, that's going away. And we're gonna have that same amount be as part of the added to our city property tax. The question is, should there be a line item for that residents know, hey, that money actually is going to the paramedic services, and like I see in my property tax bill, there's one question. And then as I think about that more, the process that's happened in the past with that money that ends up in Farmington for the paramedic services, does the county they just cut a check and send it to Layton City, here you go, here's the money that we collected for you for paramedic services, and that goes into has gone into the general fund, we budgeted toward paramedic services? Is that?
So what it's done in the past is that amount that they send us is by contract. So years ago, we did a contract between us and the county and South Davis Metro, and we actually received more out of that contract than what's generated by the Layton citizens. And so if we only adopt the tax rate that they're going to drop, we'll actually lose about $130,000 a year. But we've determined that we can probably, we can handle that within the EMS fund. That money has gone straight into the paramedic fund. It hasn't come to the general fund and get transferred over. It's gone straight into the paramedic fund. Davis County is allowed by state law to have a paramedic levy. We're not. That isn't something that the legislature's allowed us to have. So we have to include that in our general property tax levy. So to answer your question, we can't break it out to say city paramedic, one levy, and general property tax another levy. We have to include everything in one levy. The only exception they make for that is debt service. So if we have a general obligation bond, we can issue a separate levy for that bond. I think that answered the question. So what we'll do is in the budget, we'll determine a fixed amount that is related to that. levy. We'll bring that forward at the next meeting, because by then they'll have the rates established. And then we'll establish a transfer between the general fund to the paramedic fund, so that that money automatically goes in to the paramedic fund. And for the first year or two, the county, Alex maybe knows the details of this a little more than I do at this point, but for the first year or two, the county is going to continue to pay us that contract amount. We talked about that.
Thanks.
Any other questions about the tentative budget?
Just a point, if I may, I think one thing that would be important for us to try to attempt to do as part of the public education on this and all discussions is to help the rest of us understand that the levy that the county is collecting now and that we'll eventually implement doesn't even come close to paying the true cost of paramedics. So,
Right.
you know, the 600,000 we'll get was less than half, it's probably a third of what it actually costs to stand up a system.
Which is why they're getting out of the business.
Pardon?
Which is why part of the reason why they're getting out of the business, because they can't afford it on the county level.
Yeah, that operationally, but it's.
All right,
I got a question on that. So in the past, we've talked about maintaining the rate. We figure that's not something to do this year with this other, or is it something that we should include in this whole process we're going to go through?
Well, a while back when we talked about it, I think, at least what I got out of the meetings was this was enough for 1 year. It will appear to be about a 7% increase on your city property tax bill. Because of course people will notice the city one went up and they won't remember that the county one went down. Don't mean to be offensive, but you know, people only look at the up, they don't look at the down.
And I'm not advocating that necessarily, I'm just bringing it up because it's been past conversation.
And I think, at least from what I understood, we determined that we would move forward with that starting in the 23 budget, that we would address that issue of holding the rate and move forward that way so that our rate doesn't get out of whack.
And so I understand you correctly by saying that we will take the mill levy, we will collect that this year, but the county will still reimburse that to us. So we'll basically be getting paid extra.
We'll turn around and pay the county what we collect.
What we collect goes to them and then back again.
And then they'll give us the contract amount until,
Which is more.
$134,000 more. And as of January 1 of 2023, is the date, then that will end, and then we'll just collect what the levy is that we generate.
is that it? Okay, you want to go ahead and proceed then with the item number 4?
Sure, so ordinance 21-10, amending the adopted budget for the current fiscal year. Due to the movement and work that's being done on 2700 West, or Layton Parkway and 2700 West, there was a need to transfer some impact fee funding, transportation impact fee funding over to the capital projects fund to continue moving those forward. We're anticipating funding from the county, but we didn't want to get in a position where we're spending money that hasn't been appropriated before we actually get it. So we need to use our own money for now, and then we'll reimburse that once we get the money from the county. And we talked about that a few different times, that through their funding, they're bringing about $6 million to the city to help with that project out there. The other item on here, 2 items. At the end of last fiscal year, June 30th, we had a shortage in the athletic fund, mostly due to refunds and COVID and so forth. So there's $77,000 that we're transferring from the general fund to make the athletic fund whole again. And the 911 fund also had a shortage of $4,900. And so we're proposing to transfer $4,900 from the general fund to the 911 fund to cover that deficit.
So Tracy, what was caused that? Is it a dispatch staffing issue or why?
So the 911 fund only covers a portion of what providing that service costs. And so for a long time, we had charged 35% of the cost of personnel to the 911 fund, and it was a pretty good balance. Over time, as wages go up and that amount of money that we get has actually gone down. I'm not sure exactly why, but
has something to do with how many phone lines and so forth, and the conversion from landlines to cell phones, and you'd think we'd have more because there's 10 times as many cell phones, but it doesn't work that way based on how the levy is. So anyway, we made the transition for this current year budget and reduced that down to 28%. It doesn't mean that we're in a better position. We're charging less of the general fund expense to the 911 fund. In other words, we're subsidizing it more than we were in the past in order to keep it whole. The solution to that, we really haven't come up with, because it's all based on the extra, I think it's a 9 cent and a 26 cent price that you pay on your phone line, but then again, there's a difference between landline and cell phone and so forth.
As we've had stimulus money and get additional money coming at us, is that public safety? Can some of that money go to help offset that?
Well, it could, but then you'd be covering operational, ongoing operational costs instead of one-time type items. So we haven't generally gone that direction. And then the last one is a transfer from the RAM fund of $55,000 to help complete the project on the Andy Adams tennis courts. There was an overrun on that project, and so it's proposed to move some money there. In addition, there's appropriation of fund balance in the water fund and appropriation of impact fees in the storm water fund related in Layton Parkway and 2700 West projects. Any questions on any of those?
No questions? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to our item number 5, which Chad will present to us, is annexation.
Thank you. Mayor, Council, this is a annexation and zone change that was released to the council as part of their meeting back in March, several weeks ago, where you accepted the petition, certification of the annexation, taking care of the noticing over the last several weeks. So this item has been properly noticed for state law. This is the general location of the property there on the red dot there. The property location is 950 South, 1700 West. Close up view. There is a difference between the area that's proposed for annexation and the area that's proposed for zone change, because there's a little chunk of the property that's already within city limits. So that little triangle right there makes up that difference in the two areas. This next map illustrates that. You can see the little area. So the annexation area also includes a little strip of land along that existing subdivision that brings that up to a total of 5.93 acres. Annexation area is 5.44 acres. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission. It is being recommended for approval by the Planning Commission, subject to an annexation agreement. There's a few things related to extension of the roadway that's needed to continue our roadway system in the area. There's some conditions related to the recently constructed 1700 West relative to the no-cut policy and what would have to be done if that is cut into. And then this is a kind of a, as you can see, an odd-shaped parcel with the extension of the road and some other factors. This really is not one of those that we recommend for a PRUD in the future, so we are restricting, and they agreed to waive the right to come back and change the zone to something else besides the R110 that they're proposing at this time in the future. So with that, be happy to answer any questions.
So I have a question. How much time is left on the road cut? I've been in there 2 years and the road was there the whole time. So is there not a lot of time left on that 3 years?
I think there's 18 months or about there. It just depends. We'd have to go look at the actual contract date, but the road was accepted.
But they cut the road on those ones?
No, I checked today and they did not. They have not cut into the road. They did curb cuts, but no road cuts.
Any other questions?
Just, well, sorry. You haven't seen a plan for it.
We do have some preliminary layouts for a subdivision in there. It just follows a regular R110 subdivision layout.
I'm just wondering, on the road going, or the north and south there, on the left,
Over here?
No, keep
On the property, the dirt road.
just the blue line.
The dirt road.
There's an old
This-
dirt
oh,
road,
okay.
there. Not old, but it's a dirt road. I just wondered if that was gonna be a road or
No,
you don't know.
it won't be. Now, they've got the subdivision plan for this property to the west, that'll go away, it'll be a road that'll extend from 850 and connect to.
Oh, it'll spend it, you know, I see.
And so that subdivision, the new one, will connect to the Husky subdivision to the west.
It's not proposed to connect them.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, yeah, thank you very much. Okay, let's see. Brings us down to our training moment.
No, let's have more questions for Chad.
Or we could.
You better restate that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, or I know that there's been a request for a closed door meeting. So
If you want to do that, we can do that.
I'd
This
say,
is, yeah,
yeah,
that's more important if you'd like to do that. That'll take just a few minutes, so.
okay. I think we'll go with the closed door meeting,
Yeah.
guys. Forego our training.
That's all right. You know what, you know what I'm gonna do?
I thought we were voting this.
Yeah, you need a motion to go and vote.
to our city council meeting tonight, May 6th. Our start time is 7:02. I would like to acknowledge everyone in the audience. It's the first time we've had kind of a full audience, and that's great. It's customary that we go ahead and start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then after that, we have a prayer. And we kind of switch it up each month. This month, it's my month. So I've asked Your Holiness, Reverend Neil Humphreys, to give us our prayer. So after the pledge, then if you could come up and say the prayer, we'd appreciate it. So for now, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm dressed like this because the mayor ordered it. She spotted me at the War Dog Memorial a month ago or so, participating in that dedication ceremony. My name is Neil Humphrey. I've lived in Layton since 1999. I'm not a native Utahn, although my great-grandmother, who was part of a plural marriage, was from South Weber, Davis County. And my great-great-grandfather, the Danite Anson Call, was the first state president in this county. So I'm proud of all those roots, plus many others. Let us pray. Holy and eternal God, whom we call Father, we thank you for all who are gathered here this evening and for how you bless us, for life itself, for that measure of health we need to fulfill our callings. On this occasion, we thank you for the privilege to be involved in useful work and the honor of being entrusted with bearing responsibilities for all who live and work in our city. Your Holy Scriptures instruct us that citizens are to obey those who govern, for you have established those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore, I pray for our mayor, for the various levels of city officials, and in particular for this assembled council. Help them to remember that effective leadership requires a humble sense of servitude. By your grace, grant them wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, sensitivity to the welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and righteousness, confidence in what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement, and personal peace in their lives and joy in their labors. Grant them and us wisdom and courage to know and to do what is right, good, and true. May they and we speak out when it's time to speak out, and listen patiently and receptively when it's time to listen. I pray for the agenda set before them today. Please give an assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved city, we pray. In your holy name. And God's children said, Amen.
Amen. What a beautiful prayer, and thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Okay, council, we have a set of minutes, several sets of minutes that we need to approve. So is there any corrections to any of those minutes? If not, I'll look for a motion regarding the minutes, and I'll let whoever wants to make the motion to state each one of them.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the following minutes. The minutes of the Layton City Council Strategic Planning Meeting on January 13th, 2021, the minutes of the Layton City Council Work Meeting February 18th, 2021, and the minutes of the Layton City Council Work Meeting of April 1st, 2021 is written.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we adopt the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We'll now move on to our municipal announcements. Council, do any of you have any municipal announcements we need to be aware of? Okay, seeing that you have none, I actually have two announcements that I want to make in regards to Highway 89. Most of you are aware of the continued construction there, but for the right reason. And coming up on May 8th, Highway 89 will be reduced to one lane in both directions. So that would be Friday, I guess, May 8th from 9 p.m., which is Friday night, and will continue until 5 a.m. on Saturday. Excuse me. I got those backwards. But anyway, so yeah, from 9 p.m. on May 8th till 5 a.m. May 9th. And then also with Adams Canyon, any of you accessing Adams Canyon, just be aware that there's a lot of, I guess, storm sewer and storm drains going in up there, in fact, as well as at on 80, all the way along 89. But anywhere, the point that I'm going to get at is they're going to have the parking on one side of the road. So you may go up one day and you're on one side, the next 2 days later, you might go up and it might be on another side. So depending on what they have going on, just know that that parking's going to shuffle back and forth. And as far as that lane reduction, actually, it's from Cherry Lane through Oak Hills Drive, just so you're aware of it. Okay.
Mayor,
Yes?
just a question. Do you have any idea how much more excavating they have to do for the semis that are traversing Gentile? How much longer that's going to last? Do you have any idea?
I do not. I know that they've been hauling a lot of fill back and forth. So I don't know, Steve.
Just curious.
And they're traveling Layton Parkway as well.
Yeah, I don't think we know right now. But it it's continuing, and like I said, it's for improvements in the long run. But
It's got to be done.
yeah.
But just curious.
Okay. All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to our verbal presentations tonight. And tonight's kind of a fun night. Myself and Councilmember Thomas was able to judge a student contest at Layton Elementary. This is a contest that typically takes place at all the schools. But this year, with COVID, it was reduced a little bit. And I'd just like to acknowledge the students of Layton Elementary. And I know we have our principal, Melissa Pendergrass. Yeah. Would you mind coming up and kind of explaining the program? I thought it was a good, yeah, go ahead. Just kind of explain what these kids do. I mean, I got to tell you, in an elementary level and knowing what you put these kids through, I was extremely impressed, not only with the program, but with the kids.
The kids are impressive, for sure.
They are very impressive.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, council members and mayor. At Layton Elementary, we believe in not only the academics of our kids and having high expectations for that, but we also believe in creating a well-rounded student who is respectful and polite and an upstander, not a bystander, and shows mindfulness. And so 4 years ago, a few of us got to go to Atlanta, Georgia, to an academy called the Ron Clark Academy, where they hold a national amazing shake competition. And we brought back lots of ideas from that school and have implemented them, including the best house river, which you are wearing, a river, listen to me. Oh, Amistad. Excuse me. Oh, I know which house I'm in. A house system at our school, but the Amazing Shake was at a competition where our kids compete through a series of events, and we narrow it down to the cream of the crop. And this year, with COVID, we weren't sure we were going to do it, so we did it later in the year. They did 2 online rounds, which this past year has shown us that online skills are as important as in-person skills. And then we were lucky enough to be able to do 3 different in-person blitzes, if you will, so quick things with the people from Maverick, the people from Fidelity Investments who were they're not back in their office, so they were remote. And then the mayor and city councilman Day was there as well. And these kids went through the ringer. It was tough, but we have 3 beautiful, awesome students who rose to the top May I present them?
I would love you to present them, and we have a nice little token here, and
Okay.
maybe afterwards they can.
Stella Pond was our first place winner, followed by Alyssa Mangelson and Emily Schmidt.
Those kids come on up. We'd love to kind of meet you. So if you wouldn't mind, maybe you could come around and you can do an elbow bump here with the council. And then when you're done, maybe stand right here and we can take a quick picture for you.
Don't look at those.
Good job. Congratulations, sir. Congratulations. Good job. Good job. Oh, you got congratulations. All right. Good job. Congratulations. So, if you kids want to come right up here by the dice. I actually have, you guys want to, we might as well stand up for them. We have a nice little token. Go away. Okay, we're going to have. Come on, Principal, you got to be in there.
Go ahead.
All right, ready?
Hold it. Smile, Dave. Yeah. Thank you. All right.
Hey, maybe legally they should take their masks off, and so should the council for one shot without the masks on.
You don't have to tell me twice.
We will do that, and then don't leave because I got something for you.
Yeah, take your mask off for this one. You can hold your breath or whatever.
I think they're good. I know, beautiful faces, teeth. We love Layton.
Okay, and kids. Also have, I want to be able to present these kids with a really cool medallion that was made by the Davis Tech College. The neat thing about these medallions is they were made by students that were legally blind. And they have the year 2021 on them. So we want to give each one of you one of those medallions and say congratulations. There you go. And here's one for the principal. So here's one for the school. Okay, thank you.
There is fifth, and sixth.
2 5th graders?
Yeah, we had a couple fourth graders compete as well. And yep, they're the best. This is awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you again, and thanks for joining us tonight. So as you can see, there's part of our future leaders. Okay, let's go ahead and move on with our agenda items. Right now, we are down to our citizens' comments. And this is a period where, we like to hear from our citizens of any type of suggestions or accolades. But I'd like to open it up now. I have to say that since I got burned one time. But certainly, you're welcome to come up to either side of the mic. Make sure you state your name for our recorder. And if you're at all underage, then you're welcome to just write that on a piece of paper for. But we do like to keep here, if there's gauging by the group here, that if you have a representative on behalf of all of you or a large group, then certainly we'll give you a little bit more time. Otherwise, we'd ask that you kind of be brief and to the point. But the floor is now yours.
All right. Good. I'm not going to be able to talk with this. Good evening, council and mayor. Good to see you again, Joy.
Yeah, thank you.
I am Shannon Anderson, a longtime resident of Layton City, and you probably recognize my name because I sent you guys a presentation that QLC is passing out here in regards to some concerns that we have related to 2200 West in Layton and approximately 650 North, which I did put in there kind of where that's located and pictures. It's directly across from the entrance into Ellison Park. And this seems to be a long time concern, but it was brought, it hit really close to home on April 7th at about 4:20 in the afternoon. No parent wants to get a call saying their child has been in a car accident. Our son was driving home from work. He works in Kaysville, so often takes 2200 West. He was stopped to turn into 650 North and was hit from behind. The lady that hit him did not even stop. She did not even see him and was going about 45 miles an hour. The second picture that I shared was 6 days later, which was another teenage resident of our city in the exact same spot. Both of these vehicles were totaled. Thank goodness that both of these vehicles were safe vehicles and these kids are okay. Both were hit by distracted driving and going way too fast. Just some, commentary. 2200 West is a main connection road between Gentile and Gordon. And I think you mentioned at the beginning about the semis. Well, I don't know how many of you tried to go down 2200 at about 5 o'clock in the evening. And today it was the line to go through was all the way back from the light on Hillfield to Gentile. So the traffic is getting worse and worse. And as that park, as Legacy continues to get built and added onto, more and more traffic is going to be diverted down that 2200. As we got prepared for this, I kind of drove around the city, helped me understand why the speed limit on Layton Parkway is less than it is on 2200. There are no residents whose driveways are right on Layton Parkway, but there are on 2200 West. My husband is a Davis County school bus driver. He has actually presented to the council multiple times about the traffic issues that we have in our city. He has a bus stop right on 2200. And just today, in dropping off his high school students, 2 vehicles passed his reds. Saturdays create additional challenges with use of the park. If you look at the pictures, this happened to be last night on the third slide that Lindsay took for us. She walked down there. We have turned 2200 into a parking lot for activities that go on at Ellison Park. We cannot see pulling out of our neighborhood. The cars park all the way up onto 650 North, right in the view of being able to turn onto 2200 on both sides. We should not be allowing that to be used as a parking lot for Ellison Park. My other big concern, and I went over and talked to the park, which is the development that's going in the old Swan Lakes, and got a count for the number of residents, multiply that by about 1.75 vehicles. As soon as that area is completed, there will be approximately 400 plus more vehicles traveling on a daily basis in and out of 2200 West. I'm now going to turn it over to Elsie. This is not an Elsie and Shannon concern. She's going to share what she has done and give her perspective from it. I think it'll be great to hear from some of our youth.
That's cute. She listens.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elsie Thacker. I live west of Ellison Park. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us today. I feel very passionate about this. Something needs to be done about this traffic concern we are discussing. Many other residents in West Layton are also concerned. I put together a survey to get an idea of how many people are concerned about this. In the survey, please look at the notes we gave to you to see more details. Please see question 3 and 4 of the survey. We got 66 responses, and one of the questions we asked was, do you feel you are safe to walk or bike across 2200 West? 92.5% said no. And then another question was, would you feel safer if there was a crosswalk? 97.5% said yes. We also asked for feedback from residents on their concerns about this area that are listed on the paper for you all. So one of the residents stated, it is becoming a very busy intersection that is too busy and too dangerous for kids to cross. There is no sidewalk on the west side of 2200 West for kids to go to a stoplight, even if they wanted to. Now, with the new housing development going in on the southeast corner of 2200 West and Gordon, there definitely should have been a traffic plan for the intersection of 650 North and 2200 West. A stoplight would be ideal for a crosswalk. At the very least. I'm aware of a similar situation near Barnes Park in Kaysville. They had gone to the city and asked for something to be done. Unfortunately, a little girl was hit and killed on this road. It wasn't until after she was killed that the city did something. I am asking you to consider this before this happens to one of us. I encourage you read through the comments that are in the presentation. Thank you for seriously considering this matter and for your time. Do you have any questions?
Do you have any questions? I got to hand it to you. This is extremely well thought out of, and you've done an excellent job on this.
Thank you.
I got a question. Elsie, help me out with 650.
650
Is that go right into the park?
Yes, it does.
So you go into Swan Lakes, if you turn left, well, depends which way you're going.
Yeah,
right?
so, 2200, so Gordon, Gentile. 650 is about right in the middle. It's the entrance right into Ellison Park.
Yeah, it's on the west side.
Correct.
So you're talking right there.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've got about 5 or 6 residents that have driveways to pull out, and I'm not sure who was able to come tonight, but one of the residents shared with me through a Facebook message that she's the second owner of the house. It's the older home that's been redone.
Yeah.
The first owner of the house actually had an accident happen, and a truck and a trailer ended up in their front yard.
Yeah.
Well, I do know that there is a plan in place for street improvements in this area, not only for widening, but for striping as well as a sidewalk. But you guys have raised a lot of other concerns here that I think we need to probably turn this over to our staff and have them kind of investigate this for us and see what would be warranted and allow us to kind of go through that process, if you don't mind.
We appreciate the consideration.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah?
So do you go to Ellison Park Elementary?
No, I go to Sand Springs, but a lot of kids in my neighborhood do go to Ellison Park.
What is the path that they take? What is the path that they should take?
So if the parents don't drive them to work or to school, which is most of what they do because of the concern about they have to go out onto Gordon and walk down. And with the construction going on at the park, it is very unsafe for those children right now to be walking on that sidewalk. There's a lot of heavy equipment going in and out of that on a daily basis, so most parents have opted to drive their children to school.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Zach, did you have a question? Oh, okay. All right, well, thank you. We appreciate you bringing this to our attention. You're welcome to come up, just state your name and your address for the recorder. And
Wes Escalante, 2611 West, 650 North. So I was looking that up as well. From my house, as the bird flies, we're about 0.9 miles from the school. State code says that school districts need to provide a bus if it's 1.5. And I figure since they're not supposed to cross the street there per city, they tell them to go up to Hillfield. It actually comes out to 1.42 from my house. From another house down the road, it is 1.51 in the school district, whether you go to Gordon or Hillfield. And so as a city school district, as our situation, we're failing those houses by making them go over either to Gordon or Hillfield for these kids. So if we're not willing to give them a school bus stop, then we should be giving them a crosswalk. And I believe state code says that at an intersection, even if the crosswalk isn't marked, because it is a four-way intersection, a crosswalk should legally exist.
Are you talking at 650 or are you talking about
I'm talking 650 and 22 at that intersection where it goes into the park. So there should be an intersection there. And then I also believe because it's a 2-lane road, we should actually push the speed limit down to 35 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And so we should reduce it. We should also put a crosswalk in, whether it be the orange flags or the flashing thing over on Hillfield. I like that one as well.
I know, I do know, yeah, I do too. And I've used it, believe me.
Yeah, it works great.
Along with the flag. I'm not sure, I do know that there is a state statute as far as legally how far in advance, because whenever there's a crosswalk, you got to be able to acknowledge that traffic or give them fair warning that you're approaching a crossing. And from my understanding is I don't think there's enough distance for that, according to the state statute. But that doesn't mean that we can't probably look at improving the crossings at both Gordon and Gentile for you. And as far as the school district, with the, I guess with your busing or providing the crossing guards, you need to contact them as well, and then we work with them.
Gotcha. And they said
agree.
they can't put anything there until there's an actual crosswalk there. And they said that they would have to lower the speed limit. And so that's where it comes back to you guys to get this rolling.
And that's where that's why I'm saying we really need to rely on our staff and have them do some studies in that. Looks like our city manager wants to chime in here.
Well, just to inform just a little bit, it's a very legitimate question. The city's aware of this area, and with the growth that's happening, it is changing. There's no doubt about that. And what used to be a fairly quiet country road is not so much anymore, and it's going to continue to develop. The north end's being developed now intensively, as you talked about, and eventually the south end will, as well as just so many people want to move here. The one thing I think it's important to understand, which most people don't because it's not your business, and you don't think about these things, you're raising families, and that's the job of the city to look at, is that all of these traffic control devices are driven by specific metrics, both by state law and by engineering practices. And so the safety issues that are put in or not put in are driven by that. They're not driven by emotion. They're not driven by convenience. They're all about creating the safest environment. So there's a process called a warrant study. So whenever the city puts a street light in, a stop sign in, a crosswalk in, there's a pedestrian crosswalk that has a specific definition. There's a school crossing that has a specific definition, and they're two completely different things. And the requirements associated with each of those is completely different. And the city has to follow those codes because they're state law in some cases or just best engineering practices. And if the city doesn't, if we put things in because of convenience or because of emotion or what have you, all the very legitimate reasons from people who live in an area, then the city puts itself, thus the taxpayers, at risk legally to be sued if someone were to be injured. So in this area, as the mayor, the studies that we've done in the past, it does not meet the criteria for a school crossing at this point in time. And as the mayor indicated, it does in terms of volume, based on a recent survey we did, in terms of the number of people that are crossing. The challenge with that is where you're crossing is not according to the school route plan. Was a cooperative effort between the school safety committee and the school and the parents and the city to identify that. And that was as Mrs. Anderson, is that what your name? Mrs. Anderson indicated, was to push the students north up through the subdivision where there is walk to Gordon and then go east on Gordon to the school. That was the approved plan because of the inconvenience and concerns about safety, which we understand. Many have chose to just cross at 650 north on 2200 west. So that's a scary thing to do. It's an inappropriate thing to do from a safety perspective. I don't say that from a judgmental perspective. So we have looked at the viability of putting a school crossing there. As the mayor indicated, the challenge is that in order, when you have a school, a legitimate school crossing, you have to have a number of warnings that will tell drivers that you're approaching and then entering into a school crossing area. So you've got to have reduced speed limit signs. You've got to have other kind of warning signs that give the driver plenty of time to do that. And those have in state statute specific criteria as to when those notices have to be given. The challenge here is that distance between Hillfield on the south and Gordon on the north do not allow for those laws to be met in terms of the notification. So that's one of the challenges we're going to have to try to work through there. So it leaves you with the pedestrian crossing. Typically, best practice is to avoid mid-block crossings for pedestrians. If you put pedestrian crossings where people don't anticipate seeing them, most people assume that at an intersection at Gordon or at Hillfield Road on the south, it's a controlled intersection, it's a lighted intersection. The cars stop, or at least have every direction to stop. We recognize some people don't, or they do a rolling stop. But at least there's a measure of expectancy. So the city historically has been very careful about where we place other types of pedestrian crossings to not exacerbate a problem. The other thing we need to worry about here, which we have these issues all across the city, is an adult, us, we should be able to understand, look both ways and understand when we see a crosswalk, we need to look before we cross. Sometimes young people don't process that in the same way. And because there's a crossing, even though it's an unmanned, unguarded pedestrian crossing, they believe that it's safe to step out into that crosswalk without waiting to see what the driver behavior is, which actually, in some cases, I'm not saying it's the case here, but actually makes it much more unsafe because it creates a false sense of security that I'm going to walk in a crosswalk and everybody can stop. Even in the city, in Kaysville, which I'm familiar with, as an example, where we have the large hot crossings, which are you push the button and it lights flash, like Las Vegas neon. People run those all the time, and it has nothing to do with the structure of the intersection. It's because we just don't pay attention what we're doing. So those are all. I'm not trying to say anything negative. I'm just giving you the background for how the city has to look at these things and how we historically have looked at these things to ensure that we're not exacerbating a problem. But we're going to continue to look at it. The park had to do a traffic study required by the council. That was an estimate based on what was going to happen. We're continuing to evaluate that, and as it gets more fully developed and we start getting actually people coming in and out, we can see the movements. Are they going south? Are they going north? What have you? We'll continue to evaluate that and try to address the issue. And at some point, it may make sense for a pedestrian crossing. We just want to make sure it gets put in the right place, and the money that we're spending on behalf of all of you, the taxpayers, is being spent wisely. So it's a very legitimate issue. We've talked about it internally ourselves before, recognizing that area is changing. But I guess what I'm trying to convey, it's a much more complex issue than it may appear to be for a resident. And I fully understand that. If parents are concerned and you see what's happening and these accidents, and it's can be unsettling.
And I completely understand that. And I completely understand people will run red lights. They'll run stop signs. They'll go two cars around a bus. Absolutely. We can't control that. However, we can minimize the risk. And as you said, Layton City has risk now. Whether you leave a crosswalk there or you don't. Right now, I'd say at least on every weekend, a couple hundred people cross anywhere along that line, because no one's going to walk 0.3 miles down to the stoplight to walk right back. And so we already have the risk. And I just want to make sure you guys understand, whether you put one in or not, eventually something's going to happen there.
And we do understand the risk. The distance is a little over 1,200 feet. As I recall, to walk down to Hillfield Road to cross and then come back up, it's approximately a 5-minute walk. We understand that's a long time for little legs, and maybe even for adult legs from time to time. So again, we're not aware of it. We're not dismissive of it. I think that the issue with regard to that you've raised legitimately with regard to the speed limit is something definitely need to look at because that area is changing. The issue with the parking, we're well aware of that. And it's maddening because the city actually does have parking on the eastern side of the park, but it's generally has multitudes of parking space, but all of us are selfish, that's the only way to frame it. And we're willing to park in your neighborhood in front of your driveway because it only takes me 50 steps to get to the ball field than if I park over where there's actually designated parking. But the city's actually working under the council's direction to establish more parking, more surface parking. It's going to be in the center and eastern part of that park because that's the place to do it. So, but we'll continue to look at that. We'll look at the red striping and maybe, again, I say it nicely, but get a good dose of enforcement. And a few tickets. We had that same issue for several years along the south side of Hillfield Road. People were parking on the south side of Hillfield and then walking across Hillfield, which is ludicrous because of the speeds and volumes of traffic there. And we just began a very aggressive effort after a lot of warnings of just writing citations, and that's pretty cleaned up, but they've just moved to other locations. And so we're aware of that and recognize that that's part of the cat and mouse. I'm not trying to be flippant or too blunt about it, but that's the reality. And so we can easily, all those kinds of things we can easily do. And what you've described should not be happening in your subdivision. So maybe that's too much information, Mayor, but I wanted to just help these folks understand we're sympathetic to it and aware of it and are continuing to look at it. We just need to do it in the right way and in the right time and not exacerbate an issue, but
Okay. Well, thank you, and I just want to, let you folks know that we'll definitely take this serious and follow back up with the staff and see what we can do here.
And can I say to Elsie, thank you. It's hard as an adult to get up and talk and do what you just did. So bravo to you for having the nerve to do it. Thank you.
And I know, how old are you, Elsie? Well, I was going to say you could run for one of these seats in just a few months. You might not be old enough, but we'd love to have you. So,
Have mine. Yeah, that's nobody,
Okay. Go ahead and state your name and purpose.
My name is Diantha Mangelson. I just wanted to talk about our neighborhood and some traffic issues there. I'm new to this, so I don't know exactly if I'm going to overstep in what I'm saying, but I'll do my best. We live in the neighborhood just south of the new Layton Hospital. So we are east of Flint Street and south of Layton Hospital. We're in that neighborhood. When Layton Hospital was put in, I know that there was consideration of making 200 East go through to Layton Parkway, and that was pushed down by someone. I don't know. I want to smack them though, maybe a little bit. But we only have one way to get in and out of our entire neighborhood, and that is onto Flint. And Flint is insane. It gets so busy and so backed up. It'll be stopped from Layton Parkway, clear back past 900 South. It's stopped on rush hour. And my idea, and I don't know if it's possible, is putting a turn lane on Flint. I have almost been rear-ended multiple times trying to turn into my neighborhood. There is a turn lane if you go further north, and there's a turn lane if you go further south. But for some reason in that middle area, there's no turn lane there. And if you look at the width of the road, from my own just observances, it appears to be the same width steadily throughout. So I don't understand why there isn't a turn lane there. And also, I know in the past they've looked at possibly putting a crosswalk there, but they said that on the study there wasn't enough foot traffic, and I just really wonder what time they did that study. At night, especially when there's church activities, there's a ton of youth that are crossing that road, and it can get really dangerous and really scary. I used to not mind my kids crossing that road, and probably within the last year or so, it scares me. It scares me to have my teenager cross that road. It is extremely busy. Luckily, the speed limit on that road is not as fast as these people, so we don't have that issue as much as the traffic, although nobody follows the speed limit. But that's another story for another day. But that's just something I'd love for them to look into. to see if we can make that safer for the community that lives in that area. I know when they had for a while, they put up a fake light there because it was only one lane through part of it. Oh my goodness, never do that again. Get a flag man. It took an hour to get a third of a mile. Tell them no, just the flag man. The flag man was amazing. The fake light was terrible. It doesn't understand, but it's a scary place. I've waited 15 minutes to turn left out of my neighborhood before on multiple occasions, especially during rush hour. So that's all I have.
So are you talking about the yellow lines that are down the center as the turn lane? Is that what
Yes,
you're talking about?
that's what I'm
So
talking
the
about.
history behind that is when the hospital was built, that was pushed because the residents across the street needed to be able to get out of their driveways for kind of the same. So that's why that was put in that section by the highway, was for those residents to be able to
Okay.
exit their driveways and have a place to
go.
pull out into.
Well, I'd love
before
to get out of
pulling
my
into
neighborhood.
traffic.
There's hundreds of us in there.
Yeah.
And so a turn lane would be, and also just when I'm turning into my neighborhood, like I said, I've almost been rear-ended multiple times because I have nowhere to go. And a lot of the times you'll have 4 or 5 people lined up to turn into our neighborhood. And it really slows down traffic. And that road's already struggling. So anything that can help prevent traffic impeding would be helpful. But it does make me nervous putting in that turn lane if there's not a crosswalk. The closest crosswalk from the south is clear at 200. That's about a half mile away. And the closest crosswalk from the north is past the hospital. And they would have to pass that busy hospital and go clear up to there. That's about a third of a mile away. So there isn't, I don't think a school crosswalk is necessary there, but just a crosswalk would be nice with some flags for the kids to try to get attention of some of those cars to stop them. So,
Okay,
anyway.
well, thank you. I think what we're all hearing here is the effects of how our city is changing and the growth that's going on. I happen to live in that same area. I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm on Gentile. It's a struggle to get in and out of my driveway as well, depending on the time of day. I do know that there are crosswalks right there at the intersection of Flint and the Parkway.
Yeah,
But
that's
just
about
like,
a third of a mile from
yeah,
900.
but just like everyone else, I mean, we all want the shortest distance to the point of destination where we're going. But again, I think we're going to have to kind of really analyze a lot of this throughout our city. But yeah, it's a struggle. But I guess the case in point here is, especially for you during rush hour traffic, that I think once we get this West Davis corridor in, that hopefully that's going to eliminate a lot of this traffic that's on our artillery streets. I mean, you're faced with it on Flint. I'm faced with it on Gentile. These folks are faced with it on 2200. And, this is just the west side really booming right now. So, but certainly we'll take all this in and see what we can do.
Yeah. I was just going to say that the work, which we appreciate, the state work on Highway 89, which is obviously one of the major north-south transportation routes, and then on I-15, which is the only other north-south route. There's literally, if you drive during, especially afternoon rush hour, you're trying to come into Davis County or northern Davis County. It doesn't matter if you get off in Farmington or Kaysville or Layton, virtually every side street, and it wasn't like this at all a year ago, is just jam-packed. I went down on the same street a little earlier, about 4 o'clock, and there were cars backed up on Flint Street from the light all the way to the entrance to the Smiths subdivision at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I thought, where in the heck is everybody going?
This is constant.
So I think, as the mayor said, I think that's going to, over time, alleviate as these roads get back open. People will get back to the normal patterns. But it is a growing area. It is going to be busy. With regard to the original issue you were talking about with regard to why that wasn't punched through initially, that was a subject, I happened to be here then, and that was a subject of a great debate within the city, but also within the neighborhood. And the reason why 200 was not connected through was a concern from the residents. the ones who lived along Flint Street weren't concerned about it, but the ones that were more interior to the subdivision were very concerned that they would become the cut through for people trying to get through to the Parkway.
I know why they didn't put it in.
And so it was a decision that was made ultimately with public input and in the hospital and so forth. But yeah, it's still it's a real issue. Again, with the striping, I'm overstaying my welcome, but the striping issue, a lot of those things happen, they evolve, and as problems develop, because growth solves problems and growth creates problems. And sometimes it creates a problem for a short period of time before you have enough data to change that. And I think the striping, typically we could stripe 4 lanes. We usually stripe 3 to try to provide the flexibility that Councilmember Fitzpatrick was talking about. At some point, your volumes get large enough that you have to make an adjustment, again, driven out of safety. So those things just happen naturally, but it's good to be reminded and to hear from people that live in those areas. We drive them, we manage them, it's our responsibility, but we don't live there and see everything that you do. So this feedback is really, really helpful for us to put a personal touch and a perspective on it. But
Now I just need to teach the people in my neighborhood that if you're turning left, get in the middle so I can turn right at the same time. Then I don't have to wait your 15 minutes. I just have to wait my 3 to turn right.
So Alex, would it be worth looking at reopening that 200 East? I know I was here too on the planning commission when all that came through and the controversy about it being a pass through, but if that's their only in and out and that road now leads to a lighted intersection at the Parkway, would it be something to look at re-looking at that issue to provide another egress for that subdivision?
I think we could always look at it. I think the challenge now is that IHC owns all that property. It was never dedicated, so it'd be a matter of IHC being willing to give up a road they don't control it, run it right through the heart of their development. That was why it was discussed extensively before that, and there were pros on both sides and cons on both sides, but that was ultimately the decision that was made. But that subdivision does have challenges with access.
Can I make a suggestion if that does get reopened up? I've thought about that a lot, and I feel for the people that live on 200 because I could see that definitely they're used to a dead end. And so opening that up to a busy road down the street was, it's a little traumatizing, right? I get that. But I thought about if that is not a complete straight road and kind of curved to the hospital, then really the only people that would use it, hopefully, would be the people that live in that neighborhood. But that was just the thought, rather than make it a direct straight line, which is easier to the eye to follow instead of maybe a turn. So just a thought. Anyway, thank you for listening to me. Thank you for taking time.
Ms. Mangelson, could I please get your address?
That's 251 East, 925 South.
Thank you.
Layton.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to address us from the public comment? Okay, all righty.
I'll just take like 30 seconds. Chris Anderson, husband of Shannon Anderson, so same address.
Okay.
I came here about 3 years ago at this pulpit and talked about bus stops and people running my reds. Nothing's been done in 3 years. It's ridiculous to me. As my wife mentioned earlier, I had 2 people run my reds today. And let me tell you, it wasn't coming southbound. It was on my right-hand side of the bus as I was letting kids off.
Oh.
People are ignorant. It's all about them. They don't care. They don't. And as a bus driver and the 300 other bus drivers that we are sick of it. We've mentioned to the cops numerous times to have something done, and they don't care. They really don't.
Can I ask you a
Nothing. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, you're good.
So let me ask you a question. Is that occurring more in the morning or in your afternoon routes?
It's about 50-50.
Okay.
It's 60-40 in the morning.
More so in the morning?
Yeah. My other question is too for Alex. I have a bus stop at Fieldstone Way, right north of Layton Parkway. There's a crosswalk there. Can you explain why there is one there, but you can't put one at 650?
I can't because I'm not familiar with the
Okay.
history of that. I'd be happy to look at it, though.
Okay, so Fieldstone Way is the entrance to the neighborhood where the new elementary school is, off of 2200. What's it called again? Sunburst Elementary. I understand they probably put that crosswalk there because there's kids that are going to that school from across the neighborhood or across 2200. I don't see what any different that is of kids going to Ellison Park from our neighborhood. And it is just as close from that intersection to the crosswalk as it is from Hillfield to 650. So if you can just maybe look into that and just let us know or something like that, I would appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Oh, one more.
Okay, my name's Brianne Schmidt, and I live in the 900 Flint Street neighborhood. So I live on 900 and 200 East. It's super fun to be that corner. Don't want 200 East open. My concern is actually, I saw the preliminaries for a new park that's opening somewhere here. I can't remember the name of it. It's probably
It's out where the gentleman just spoke of as far as the new
Okay.
elementary.
I have 5 children. They range from 2 to 12. And that new park has a big kid section and a little kid section, which is wonderful, except for what I saw in the preliminary drawing is it looked like it was a bunch of trees in between the big kid section and the little kid section, which means as a mom who has 5 kids that's going to go everywhere, I can't sit in the middle or I can't sit to the side and be able to see everything because the trees are there. So is that what the drawing is? Is it's trees in between? I get shade because I want shade as the mom.
Yeah.
But I need to be able to see the park to watch my 2-year-old run around and to watch my 12-year-old because there's crazies everywhere. So I don't know if trees can be moved or benches or something. It's a weird one, I know, and definitely not as safety concerned as roads, but yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that our parks planner has taken that into consideration and the type of trees that she was planning, that they would be more of a and there are benches planned so that you can sit in the shade, but I know that she did take into consideration the line of sight in both areas.
Okay.
So,
because from the top, the drawings I saw,
the drawing
I'm
just looks like a clump, but I can tell you that she did take that into consideration.
Because I've been to other parks where instead of it being the relaxing, let my kids run around, I am constantly trying to find them because there's trees, bushes, whatever in the way. And then they think I'm crazy that I'm always calling to them because I've dressed them in the bright neon shirt and still can't find them. So, all right.
Well, good for you.
That's it. Thanks.
Before you go, the recorder needs your address.
Oh, 223 East, 900 South.
Thank you. Okay, last call. Anyone else? Mr. Crane might have one online.
There's just one online comment from Rachel Burris, and it is regarding 2200. I don't have an address, Kim, but Rachel Burris, yeah, and she is also speaking in favor of something being done at the intersection of 2200 and 650. I sent a copy to Kim, and I sent a copy to each of you. So.
Very good. Thank you for.
Mayor, can I say something?
Absolutely.
So, to the bus driver, our police officers can't be everywhere at all times, but I can tell you this. We need 2 things in my office to prosecute a case like that. One would be we need a description of the vehicle with a license plate number. And the second thing is we need somebody that can describe who was driving the car at the time. And if you're able to do those 2 things, we can actually prosecute a case based on your testimony alone. So
I would love to have you come ride with me so you can get that information.
There's no way a bus driver can do it. Would you rather make sure those kids don't get ran
and
over?
that's what I'm saying.
I know, I understand.
There's not a lot. By the time you've seen them go by, and the police officer comes up behind you, You know, you'd have to have a police officer literally following you from stop to stop to stop.
Yeah, and I get it.
And
I,
they just can't do that.
Yeah,
But-
I do get it. And
I'd love to ride with you too, but
I would love
just
to have
can't.
you ride with me.
So if one day, all it takes is one day of somebody with you with a camera that can take a shot, if you got somebody that'll go with you, and then same person can describe who's in the vehicle, I'll prosecute a case like that. So
Yeah, we've had many bus drivers ask the district and even state funding for putting cameras as we have our stop arms out to catch these cars that are doing that. And they just say it's too expensive. So we would love to have it, and I'd love to get information on the cars and stuff like that. But my focus is on the kids and making sure they're safe. So
we appreciate that.
Yeah.
It should be. So,
So I wasn't going to bring it up when I talked about the traffic situation because I wanted to kind of leave the police out because I honestly right now I'm not sure why anyone would want to be a police officer, but we have an issue in our city with the lack of officer resources. When my son was hit, it took 25 minutes for an officer to get there, and that was after me calling an officer that I know his direct phone number. We had 6 officers at that time and 22 calls, and 4 officers were at a fight. If my son would have been injured, that could have been a bad deal. So we have hot spots. There are hot spots within our area that absolutely need to be patrolled. We live on 900 North, where some traffic study was done, thought it was a great idea to put 2 stop signs, one at mine. I work in my office right on the corner window. 99% of the people run that stop sign every single day. I watch it. I watch the garbage truck, the cement trucks, everything. I hear screeches all day long of people almost getting hit. I know we don't have enough resources for officers for what our city is growing. We seriously need to think that there needs to be some funding for the police department, whether that be additional patrol or something. But it became apparent to me that I thought, wow, if my son was seriously injured, I'm going to wait 25 minutes before I get any help. And I happened to only have the ambulance stop because they were on their way back to the station and drove by and saw what was going on. So a little plug for the police department. We're absolutely not where we need to be with the growth that we are seeing. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
I was just going to mention, not to belabor, but if that would have come in as an EMS call, and I haven't listened to it obviously, but
I get it.
if somebody was injured, the EMS and the medics would have showed up, and we average about a 4 to 5 minute response time. So if it came in as a police property damage call, then they're going to take care of the family fight or the domestic violence before they come there. So if your son would have been hurt, you'd have had an ambulance there and a paramedic.
I understand. I have family members in the police force. I completely recognize that. But even if he was injured and there needed to be, just so you know, the officer did not cite the lady who hit my son, but the officer that was on call at the other time did cite them. The officer that was on call at the time of my son, they were too busy and he really didn't want to do the paperwork.
Okay, well, thank you. We'll note that as well. One last time, anybody else on public comment? Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate all the feedback we've received tonight, and we'll certainly take that into consideration. We'll now move on to our consent items, and these items are considered routine in nature and can be acted upon in a single motion if desired by the council. If anybody wants to remove any of these, we certainly could, but for the time being, I think we'll just go ahead and proceed as our agenda is written. So item number A will be presented by Mr. Steve Jackson, which is to adopt the 2020 Layton City Municipal Wastewater Plan.
Mayor and Council, it's good to be with you tonight. Before you for your adoption is Resolution 20-21, which approves the Utah Department of Environmental Quality's requirement for us to submit our annual Layton City Wastewater Planning Program annual report. Some of the highlights from that report just include basic information about our system, how many facilities. We have over 200 miles of pipes. Our largest pipe is 18 inches in size. The approximate year the system started was 1945. There are 7 collection system operators that are certified with the city at this time to maintain and operate that system, as well as other staff that assist with that. Some of the biggest issues we face in the system are from fats, oils, and grease that are put down the sewer pipes, as well as sometimes we get roots in our pipes from older concrete pipes that have maybe weakened joints or whatever. But then sanitary wipes are also a very big one. I know you know about those, but they are a major problem in every sewer system in the country right now. So, and then vandalism. People like to throw things in our sewer manholes for some reason, and I get it, but it causes us problems. So with that, I'm not going to belabor it. The recommendation from staff is to adopt Resolution 20-21, authorizing the adoption of the 2020 Layton City Municipal Wastewater Planning Program Annual Report, and authorize the mayor to sign the necessary documents. Can I answer any questions?
I have a couple. So on page 3 of the report, it talks about one area talks about showing the funding revenues are sufficient for the OM&R for the next 5 years. But then it goes on to ask about the repair and replacement sinking fund anticipated to meet the needs. We don't have one. So are the funding revenues sufficient if we don't have a replacement plan fund for whatever the sinking?
Yes, we do have sufficient funds. What the sinking fund is a very specific fund that you can establish that you put money into every year for unexpected expenses or maybe larger expenses that you don't necessarily want to plan for. Our rates are set such that we have just a single account that we use, and we make sure that those rates cover all of our expenses, and we don't have a separate fund that only is authorized for that. There's other companies. Weber Basin, for example, has one of these funds now where they call it their capital asset replacement recovery, and they earmark it for only those things. And we've just operated historically off of the one account. We move the money where it needs to be for either capital projects or repairs.
Okay, and then on that same page as well, it talks about a rate study having not been done in 5 years, and that we don't charge impact fees. Do we not charge sewer impact fees, or?
No, the sewer district does have an impact fee that they charge, and we don't have one. It's typically the sewer lines are not oversized for the system. They put in a minimum size, and it services their properties, and so there is no impact fee there. The rate study has not been completed in the last 5 years, if you recall, because the sewer district was increasing their rates pretty steadily for the last little while, and that's why we've held off on doing one of those rate studies, but that is on the horizon for just to make sure we're covering our costs.
Okay, and then I just have kind of one other question. So in going through it, it talks about the under facilities maintenance and then SSMP evaluation, and then it says date of public notice, June 19th, 2014. So was that the last time we looked at something that we had to have a public notice of?
For the SSMP, that was the last time that it was required to be publicly noticed. We use that to constantly look at how we're maintaining the systems, but there haven't been major changes to this program for quite a while. It's a fairly robust system that works very well, and so we feel like we've got a good program in place. There's always ways to improve, but nothing that has been substantial that we need to address from a state standpoint where that has to be publicly noticed. So.
Okay, and I think the report's great. I really like the demographics I mentioned to you that were tied to the end of it. I'm not sure we've seen some of that, but I think it's just kind of really neat in reading it that, you know, this is a $305 million system, and it runs for 219 miles. And one of the things that really shocked me on it was the largest pipe that we have currently was installed in 1956. That's a long time ago. Hopefully that pipe's really, really holding up. But you know, and the one thing that really caught my eye that I hope some education's been done on is that the sanitary wipes are continuing to be a problem in the system. You guys are finding them, you know, at locations, and, you know, TV commercials tell you to use them, but we shouldn't be. So,
But I know the sewer district's been on a big push too to kind of encourage people not to use them. And it's nationwide, they've been trying to do this, but they put I know that they're working with a lot of the manufacturers to see if they can kind of change perhaps some of the material it's made out of so it doesn't catch. What's happening is you've got cement pipes and those things are nets, and they just you know, attach themselves to the sewer, to those cement pipes. But Mr. Thomas, did you have a question?
An excuse, but I'm reading here, is this resolution 2120 or 2021? Because I keep hearing 2021.
Excuse me then, it's 2120.
Okay.
If I've misspoken, I apologize.
I'm sorry.
But it is,
I
no, it
even
is
brought it
20,
up. That's not my nature.
2120. So,
But yeah, okay,
yeah,
so
please,
it's
please
2120.
approve 2120. If I'm a little dyslexic, I guess, on that, but thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to item B, which our city recorder, Kimberly Reed, will go over that item for us regarding polling.
In your packet, you should have a copy of Resolution 2124, which will approve the polling locations and vote centers associated with the 2021 municipal election. Do you have any questions that I can answer?
Do you want to state them just in case anybody's watching?
The polling locations and vote centers identified for Davis County for the 2021 municipal election will be Bountiful Library, Centerville Library, Clearfield City Hall, Clinton Recreation Center, Farmington Community Center, Fruit Heights City Hall, that it would be just for the general election only, Kaysville Library, Davis Conference Center, North Salt Lake City Hall, South Weber Family Activity Center, Sunset City Hall, Syracuse Library, West Bountiful City Hall, West Point City Hall, and Woods Cross City Hall. Let me point out that Layton City's polling location is not here. It's the Davis Conference Center. All of these polling locations are designated for the primary and the general. However, if a city does not have a primary election within their city, their respective vote center is not open for the primary election. Also, their council member Fitzpatrick asked prior to the meeting tonight about Dropbox locations. In the past, we've had a Dropbox location here. It was a temporary box here at City Hall. That no longer will be available this election. Davis County has installed permanent drop boxes at every polling location. Those are secure, protected. They're available 24 hours a day. And that was the problem with what we had here, is that it was only open during business hours. So anything after 5 p.m. or on weekends or earlier in the morning before we opened at 8 a.m., those ballots weren't able to be dropped off. So, you have any questions?
Questions?
Okay.
Very good. Thank
Thanks.
you. Okay, item number C is regarding our adoptive of our tentative budget, and Mr. Tracy Probert, our finance director, will present that.
Mayor, members of the council, I bring to you tonight Resolution 21-23, adopting a tentative budget for Layton City for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022, and setting a public hearing to hear interested persons prior to the final adoption of the budget. Just a few highlights on the budget. This budget proposes, given the beginning of the construction of new fire station on the east side of the city, to hire 6 new firefighters for 9 months of the fiscal year and an additional 6 for 3 months of that fiscal year, 1 new police officer, 1 evidence technician in the police department, 1 accounting clerk in the finance department. It also proposes funding 3% merit increase for current employees and adjustments for a current salary survey. It also proposes converting 2 part-time fire inspectors to 1 full-time position. In addition to those things related to personnel, there's $30.1 million in operational expenses covered, $2.9 million in equipment, $16.2 million in projects related to streets, water, sewer, storm, street light, and ramp. Those projects are found in the tentative budget document listed on pages 96 through 99, if anyone listening would want to look at those. And there's also $3.2 million for debt service and other obligations. It's proposed that $3.7 million in general fund balance be used to balance the general fund for the 2022 budget. One of the last items worth noting in this public meeting would be that as Davis County is proposing to discontinue their paramedic service or provision of that service at the end of calendar year 2022, all of the cities and districts in the county are in the process of signing an agreement where that service will be provided by will continue to be provided by Layton, of course, but be picked up by other cities who are not currently providing paramedic service. What that means to us is that in order to continue providing the service at the same level, the city will go through a truth and taxation process to increase our city property tax levy to account for and the corresponding decrease in the county's property tax levy. So for a property tax owner, that should be a net zero increase, no decrease. But citizens will notice that, and as we go through the truth and taxation process, which was highlighted in the work meeting that will go through the end of August, and will include public hearings and some educational pieces related to that. People may notice that their city rate went up and their county rate will go down. Are there any questions related to this tentative budget?
Council?
If not, staff will recommend the council adopt resolution 21-23, adopting the tentative budget and setting a public hearing for June 3rd, 2021 at 7 p.m. here in the council chambers. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our consent items. So, council, I'd look for a motion regarding our consent items.
Madam Mayor, I move that we adopt resolutions 2120, 2124, and 2123 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the consent items as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to our public hearing. So with that, Mr. Probert's going to present our first item, which is amending the adopted budget.
Great. Mayor, members of the council, bring to you ordinance 21-10 to amend the current year fiscal budget for Layton City for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2020 and ending June 30th, 2021. From time to time throughout the year, we have to amend our budget, and we do that through a public process. Hence this time for a public hearing. Some of the major items in these amendments relate to the use of traffic impact fees for Layton Parkway and 2700 West, $1.5 million transfer from our impact fee fund to those projects in the capital projects fund. There's also a transfer of ramp funds for $55,088 for some overruns at the Andy Adams Tennis Court project. In addition, there's an amendment for $300,000 in use of water fund balance for the Layton Parkway and 2700 West project, and $900,000 in stormwater impact fees for that same project at Layton Parkway and 2700 West. We also had some shortfalls in our athletic fund. last year, $77,222, almost entirely related to the COVID pandemic and the cancellation of programs and refund of registrations for different athletic programs in the city. So we're proposing to transfer general fund monies of $77,222 to the athletic fund to make that fund whole, and $4,911 transfer from the general fund to the 911 dispatch fund for a shortfall that they had last fiscal year. Are there any questions regarding any of these amendments?
Council, any questions? Okay, thank you. With that, I would look for a motion to open the public hearing regarding item A as far as adopting the amended budget.
I'll make that motion to open the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the public, this is now a public hearing, so therefore anyone who would like to make a statement regarding item number A on our public hearing matter is welcome to do so at this time. Okay, seeing that there's none here, Mr. Crane, is there anything online?
None online.
None online. Okay, knowing that there is no comments at this time, Council, I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing regarding item number A, amending the adopted budget.
Let's close.
Okay, Madam Mayor, make a motion that we close the public hearing on item A and that we amend the adopted budget for fiscal year 2021 ordinance 21-10.
Second that.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Being that this is a public hearing, we need to do a roll call vote. So with that, I'll start with Mr. Thomas down there, Councilman Thomas.
4.
Okay. Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilman Bloxham.
Aye.
Councilman Day.
Yes.
There you have it. It's unanimous for item number A. Okay, we'll move on to item number B, which is our community block grant. And this item will be presented by Mr. Morgan Cloward.
Mayor and Council, Resolution 2122, a proposal for the 2021, 2022 Community Development Block Grant Activities and Funding. You might recall a few months ago, I made a presentation on what CDBG entails and all the activities the city has been participating in. And as you can see, I have a list of what we're proposing after consulting from comments from the public and with our CDBG committee, from administration on down to our public service partners, including Open Doors, Safe Harbor, Layton Community Action Council, which is Youth Court, and Lantern House. Any questions on those proposed funded amounts?
Do you have any questions? Okay. Oh, go ahead if you do.
One of the things, Morgan, and I appreciate all the work that the committee does. I remember last year, I have notes from last year. I went through and read the minutes from last year, and there's some, I won't name it, there's a specific public service subgrant group that has not been here to discuss any of the public hearings for the 2 years that I've been on the council, yet they're still getting money. And I'm not going to be so spiteful as to remove their funding, but Safe Harbor, Youth Court, Lantern House, they were all here, saying, here's what we're using the money for. Here's why we think we should be eligible for these types of programs and this type of money. And I haven't seen that from one of the other recipients. And so I guess it's not necessarily going to block their money or anything like that, but it's just a frustration that I've had. It's the second year that I just feel like they need to realize that they're not an entitlement. This isn't an entitlement. This is something that we have the ability to be able to decide who gets what with your help through the commission. And I just want to make sure that it's kind of put out there that we want to have, I want to see people come in and tell us what they're using the money for, because I'm not just going to check a box because they've got it last year. And so I just wanted to say that before we get too far into it. Just something that's been on my mind.
Okay. So I'm assuming you're referring to Open Doors? Okay. So did you receive my response regarding the complaint, the email that you received previously? Okay. So I was able to provide that. And I also invited Jason Weil, the director for Open Doors, to attend this evening. He is here, and I'm sure Jason would be happy to come up and answer any concerns or questions you have, Zach.
Yeah, no, and I really just wanted to have them here. So the fact that he's here, that's what I wanted.
Okay.
Because they weren't here in the first set of discussions, first public hearing, and the other three were. So the fact that they're represented here is a step in the right direction. So
okay.
I can speak to that organization as well as they just like the others. I know that they reach out and actually take care of a lot of folks, and not only just in food and housing, but childcare, as well as getting people not back on their feet, but really educating them to improve their lives. So I know it's a good organization, but yes, I'm glad that Jason's here so that you can kind of see the.
And I wouldn't want to put. I mean, these are people who are helping our residents who are in the most difficult situations of their life. So I'm not going to. I don't want to make it seem like I don't want to fund it. I want to be able to ask them what they've done with the money. That's all it was.
That's fair. That's very fair. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, may I?
Sure.
Morgan, thank you once again for all your work on this. Question about the historic downtown infrastructure. Was it similar to what we did last year with the facades on those three buildings?
So that was a separate fund
With
from
the
the county, but we do have that portion that we can use for facade grants. And we have some other projects that we're working on right now to make some improvements with the infrastructure, that part of the city.
So moving forward, we'll know what those plans are then. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, once again, this is a public hearing, so I need a motion to open up our public meeting regarding the community block grant.
Madam Mayor, make a motion that we open the public hearing on agenda item B on the public hearing.
It is now a public meeting, so anyone who wishes to speak on item number B, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Shelley Pace, and I actually live in West Valley. I am representing Davis Community Housing Authority. And, West Valley, it's not my favorite, but it was cheap. So I wanted to report on what we've done so far in the last year. The last time that I came, I'd only had a couple months in the job, so I was a little bit nervous. So far, we have provided $30,000 worth of directs to contractors who have come in and repaired things to 9 different households. We have replaced a roof. There was an elderly woman who was repeatedly becoming hospitalized due to her AC not working, and we were able to get that fixed so that she could return home and not be hospitalized every week. We were able to replace someone's windows with energy efficient ones. We went into a home who she had lost heat and was heating her home with just turning on her stove, her gas burners, and opening up her oven. Was able to get someone in there within a couple days and replace the furnace so that, didn't blow up her house or get poisoned. So with that, we do limit it to anyone with 80% or less AMI. 2 of the households were below 20% AMI and 2 were under 40%. And 5 of the households had individuals with disabilities, and there were 14 children, 27 people total. Do you have any questions?
Questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you for the report.
Oh, and actually, sorry, I just wanted to comment that Open Doors is amazing for the community, and I just wanted to vouch for them real quick. Yeah.
I don't like open doors. It's just a matter of I want to just talk to open doors.
Yeah, I understand.
They do great service.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Okay.
That's a fair complaint. I'm Jason Wild. I'm from Open Doors. You can ask me anything, Councilman. We first want to thank you for the funding that you have given us. We've been able to help thousands of Layton residents with emergency food supplies, hundreds of children served in our crisis respite nursery, and all kinds of families throughout our communities. At Open Doors, we seek out the most vulnerable people in our communities in Davis County and work with them to lift them from a vulnerable state to a safe state, at which point, once they feel safe and they have their basic needs met of some food, shelter, then we can really offer some of our programs that really move them towards self-sufficiency and hopefully thriving. We have a Circles program that is extremely intense to help move people out of poverty. In the past few years, we've had 5 people buy homes and obtain living wage jobs, which is a complete turnaround for those people who thought they were always going to live in a trailer park, and now they've got their dream house. That's actually a lot harder right now in this economy. They might have to move to West Valley. Sorry, my friend. So our request this year is to help fund our Circles, our food bank, and our motel voucher program. This past year, with the pandemic, what we really did with our motel voucher program was to help families in these really vulnerable low-income situations, that if somebody in that home got COVID, we could put them in the hotel, keep the rest of the family safe, so they could keep doing hopefully their job, even if it was just part-time, without being impacted even more negatively. So we're very grateful for that funding. I also wanted to give a shout out to the Youth Council. They've been extremely supportive of us coming and doing service projects all throughout the summer. We love them. We love seeing them. We're so happy when they show up. If you've got any questions, I'd be more than happy to take them.
I just have one out of curiosity on the motel vouchers. Do you place them, if they're a Layton resident, do you place them in a Layton motel or wherever you can find the best deal?
Our goal is to keep the money in the communities that are giving us the funding. It's not always possible. With this COVID thing, there were a lot of hotels that did not want somebody COVID positive staying in their place. So we put a few of them in a place in Clearfield where we've placed people for years that gentleman's more than willing to work with us. But our goal is that, and we did place the majority of them in Layton.
Council, any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, this is the public hearing. Does anyone else wish to speak on the topic?
Sorry, I wasn't planning on getting up for this. I'm Diantha Mangelson again. I just want to speak real briefly about Open Doors to give you more information. I've had the opportunity to do the Circles program for a little while, and I just want to say they're amazing. I learned a lot with them, with the people there. They are like a family. And if there's anybody out there that needs that, just confidence. That's what they gave me was confidence. We weren't in dire straits or anything, but I was able to go there and gain much needed confidence that I didn't have before. And if there's anybody that just wants, someone to help them through the steps and give them that confidence and help them to feel like they mean something, because we're fantastic people. that came from all walks of life into those meetings. And there was pure love and welcoming. They're amazing. And so that's just a very small portion of Safe Harbor that I personally have experience with. So just wanted to put a shout out to them.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Crane, is there anything online? Okay. Council, I'll look for action on item number B then. As far as our public hearing, I'll need a closing and
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing and adopt Resolution 21-22, the Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan for fiscal year 2021-2022.
Second.
okay, it's been moved in second. I'll take a roll call vote on this. Councilmember Day,
Yes.
Councilman Bloxham,
Aye.
Councilman Fitzpatrick, Councilman Morris,
Aye.
Councilman Thomas.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. That's unanimous. We'll now move on to item number C, which will be presented by Mr. Chad Wilkinson, our Economic and Development Director.
Thank you, Mayor.
Uh-huh.
We'll unveil this one more time for you. Yeah, there you go. It's gotten bush here since last time.
Uh-huh.
This is only going to be here till May 15th. So
I
we'll
was
get
gonna
to
wonder
use
when
it.
the play was.
Excuse me. Yes, sir. Oh, okay. I can't even compete with that. So just real briefly, we want to bring before you tonight the request for an annexation and rezone of a property. This property is located at approximately 950 South, 1700 West. The red dot on the drawing there shows the approximate location of the property. The proposed annexation is for 5.44 acres. That area is outlined, in this red cross hatching. There is a slight difference between the annexation area and the rezone area, primarily because there's a piece of this property that's already within the city. So the rezone area is a total of 5.93 acres, annexation area 5.44 acres. The proposed rezone would take the property from, portion of the property from RS to R110. The portion of the county by default goes to agricultural zoning. When it's annexed, that would be proposed to be changed to R110 as well. Just again, really briefly, the Planning Commission has reviewed this proposal. They've recommended approval of both the annexation of the zone change subject to an annexation agreement. The annexation agreement spells out a few conditions related to extension of some existing infrastructure, the treatment of a road that has a no-cut policy right now for 3 years, while since it's a new road, 1700 West, and then just some land use issues that came up during the review of the proposal. So with that, we are recommending that the council adopt. There are 3 different adoptions here tonight. First is to adopt Resolution 2121, approving the annexation agreement between Layton City and Capital Reef Management LLC. Number 2 would be to adopt Resolution, ordinance, thank you, 2109, which is approving the rezone. And then the other is to adopt 2121, I'm missing one, 2108, 2109 are both related to the rezone and the annexation. Then 2121 is related to the annexation agreement. We would recommend approval of each of these resolutions and ordinances. I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Okay. Council, any questions? Wow.
Okay.
No questions. Okay, I'll look for action to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Actually, we don't need to second that, sorry. Okay, it's now a public hearing, so anyone who wishes to speak on item number C, our annexation agreement, please step up to the podium, state your name and address. Okay, seeing that there's none who wish to speak, Mr. Crane? Nothing online. Okay, very good. Then council, I'll look for action to close the public hearing and adopt item number C. It's a complicated one.
Okay, this is a complicated one. So, if I get it wrong, Gary, just holler at me. So, Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion on the following, that we adopt the annexation agreement and request, Resolution 2021, Ordinance 2108, and Ordinance 2109, rezoning the land, and I don't know which is which, Ag to 110 or RS to 110, at the address at approximately 950 South, 1700 West. And close the public hearing.
Thank you. There's a second?
Again, I can't believe I'm doing this twice. You said 2021? Is that right?
21.
Should be 21.
On resolution.
That's a resolution 21.
Yeah, I thought you said 2021. That's okay, my ears are.
Okay. Are you going to
Oh.
second that motion then?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Thank you. Okay, it's been moved in second. I'll take a roll call vote. With that, I'll start out with Councilman Bloxham.
Aye.
Councilman Thomas.
Aye.
Okay, Councilman Day.
Yes.
It's getting late. Okay, Councilman Morris
Aye.
and Councilman Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Okay, there you have it. It's unanimous.
Okay,
Yeah.
can we make another motion that we change Tom's name to something else?
He's paying attention. He heard Thomas. Okay. Okay, that brings our public hearing to a close. It actually is the last item on our agenda, unless anybody has any unfinished business they'd like to bring before us. Okay, seeing that there's no unfinished business, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
That motion, we adjourn.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, folks, for staying, and welcome to Layton City.